All right, we are ready for Bhagavatam streams. Today we're starting the section where Shuka is going to say there's a particular divinity in each section of Bu. And he's going to say there's a particular bhakta for each divinity, and he's going to explain the way the bhakta sees the divinity. And by doing so, he's really going to give us more description about what these varshas really are. What he's talking about, where they are, etc. So let us begin with text number 15. Ilāvṛta tu. Just a moment. Ilāvṛta tu Bhagwan Bhava Ekeva Puman Nahyanyas Tatra Paro Nirvishyati Bhavanya Shapa Nimitagya Yat Pravekshata Stri Bhavas Tat Paschat Vakshami. Paschat Vakshami. In Ilāvṛta, there is one and only one man, Bhagwan Bhava. If anyone else tries to enter, they immediately become feminine as a result of violating goddess Bhavani's prohibition. I will narrate this later. So where's Ilāvṛta? I can show you in this book. It actually makes sense. The Astronomy of Srimad Bhagavatam, which is what I just recently published on the 15th chapter. Right now we're in the 16th chapter. So this gives all the astronomy for Bu and so forth. And here you can probably see Ilāvṛta is the equator, but Ilāvṛta is also Antarvarsh. So let me show you. Ilāvṛta it's the inner Antarvarsh. It's the intersection of the earth. It's the intersection of Bu, and like you can see here, the way that it's seen on the surface is as the equator. So, when he says, in this place, there's not really any people. That's basically what he's saying, isn't there? Kind of sounds like that, doesn't it? Ilāvṛta tu ek eva puman nahyanyas. There's only one person and there's nobody else. That makes sense, doesn't it? Not that many people live in the lava. So let's take a look at what I have written here first. In chapter 15, we deduced and verified that Ilāvṛta is the inner mantle of the earth. And I mean, we really deduced and verified it down to matching the geological measurements of how big it's supposed to be. It matches even. So in chapter 15, we deduced and verified that Ilāvṛta is the inner mantle of the earth. The most basic fundamental thing Shuka conveys in the current statement is that no one really lives in Ilāvṛta. It's uninhabitable. See? The only one here is Bhagwan Bhava. I've edited it out, but personally I feel like the use of the word Bhagwan here is also important. No regular person can live here in Ilāvṛta because it's the mantle, it's the lava. But Bhagwan can live here. The Bhagwan Bhava. Bhava. Who's Bhava? You might know by now who Bhava is. Bhava is Rudra, Rudra Shiva. The word bhava, you probably think it's bhava, but bhava and bhava are two different words. Bhava means the basis of your being, like your heart, your soul. Yeah, like your soul or your heart. The substrate, the foundation of the being is bhava, the foundation of the house. Bhava is what comes from just your heart, what comes from your being. So bhava and bhava are two different words. This is bhava, the substrate of the being, the foundation. This conveys that the Ilāvṛta, who lives in Ilāvṛta, bhava does. Doesn't that make sense? Because Ilāvṛta is the substrate of bhu. Ilāvṛta, the mantle of the earth, is the substrate for the crust of the earth. So, or you can, if you think bhava is the heart, the Ilāvṛta is the heart of bhu. It's the inner part of bhu. And then the crust is the body. Bhava is Rudra. Rudra is the god of destruction. So this is also significant because this conveys that whatever enters Ilāvṛta is destroyed. If you go into Ilāvṛta, you go into Bhava's domain. What does that mean? Remember, we're talking analogy here. What does it mean? These lights are a little too bright. 1 second. It means you're going to get destroyed. You can't go inside a volcano. You can't go into the center of the earth. You get destroyed. Modern geology, for example, says that anything, not just like organic things, but any rocks and things, they get melted. Anything subducted, it's called subduction, when something from the crust gets pulled under another layer of the crust and therefore gets pushed into the mantle. Anything subducted into the mantle melts, doesn't it? And then it transforms into something else due to the extreme heat and pressure. That's what's going on with this transformation that the text is talking about. The text, for example, it mentioned the prohibition of goddess Bhavani. That's Bhavanya Shap. The prohibition. A shap is a curse, a prohibition, a statement of you better not do this. That's what a shap is. Or because you violated this, the shap is there. So Bhavani is the counterpart of Bhava. It's a female counterpart of Bhava. This is Bhavani. She has a restriction that no one should enter Bhava's presence. No male should enter Bhava's presence. Shuka says, I'll tell you this story later. Tat Paschat Vakshami. The actual story of this. But right now, I'm just using this as an analogy to explain Ilāvṛta and its relationship to the crust. Nobody is allowed to enter here. If you enter, you'll be transformed into something else. The prohibition of goddess Bhavani, the shap, refers to the boundary of the earth's crust. It's really interesting, isn't it? The word Bhavani means manifested. So you have Bhava, which is the basis for the manifestation, and you have Bhavani, the thing which is manifested. Bhava is the substrate, the manifester. Bhavani is the produced, the manifested. So what the relationship is, Bhava is in Ilāvṛta, and Bhavani has a boundary around the Ilāvṛta, a shapa, that you may not cross. If you cross that boundary, you will get destroyed. You will get changed. So the earth's crust is the solidified exterior of the mantle. That's what it is. The crust is just a part of the mantle that's exposed to the air and space, so it cools off and it gets solid. So it's the bhavani of the bhava. It's the manifestation of the manifester. Anyone who transgresses shop, that boundary is destroyed and converted into something else, something female. This means that anyone entering Ilāvṛta ceases to be a wielder of energies, Shaktiman or Pumang, male, and transforms into an energy, Shakti, Stri, to be wielded by Bhava. You'll see that in the next text, actually. And anything that goes into mantle becomes part of the mantle, becomes merges into the mantle. In other words, anyone or anything entering the earth's mantle becomes sublimated into a constituent of the mantle itself. So the male-female thing is doing the Shaktiman Shakti principle. Shaktiman is for Pumang, or male, the wielder or the user of force. And female is Shakti, or Stri, the force itself, the power itself, the energy itself. So if you enter the mantle, your individual existence as a being will be destroyed, and you'll just become a constituent part of the mantle. You understand? Very cool stuff. IMO. A really great, what I'm saying is, this is a really great analogy. Such a good analogy. Why is he using analogy? Go back to the very beginning of the chapter 15 and you'll know why. And it becomes beautiful and not confusing. He's not interested in teaching a science class. He's interested in teaching Krishna Prema. How to become enwrapped in ecstatic, loving comprehension of the Absolute. So when he discusses science and astronomy and geography, he says that I'm going to do it for that purpose. So I will describe the things in a way that show how they are manifestations and reflections of these principles of divine love. So he's using the relationship between Bhavani and Bhava, and he's also going to bring in Bhagavat in the next text to explain the dynamics of the earth and the sun and the mantle and the crust in the context of explaining how love works and how divine love works. Jiva Goswami did a similar thing with grammar. You have Panini grammar and grammar rules, but Jiva Goswami said, I'll just change all of the examples. I'll just give all of the examples for the grammar using names of Vishnu. And then Bhaktas of Vishnu will love to learn Sanskrit using this. So similarly, Shuka is thinking, I could just tell you the math and everything about the mantle, but what good is that? So what do you know how big the mantle is? So what do you know that there's lava in the middle of the earth? Who cares? But if knowing that gives you a sense of the divine and your relationship to the divine, then it's important. So let me teach to you in that way that it gives you that sense. That's why he's using these analogies, and this analogy is just really, really brilliant. Okay, we'll move on to the next text. In Ilāvṛta, there is one and only one man, Bhagwan Bhava. If anyone else tries to enter, they immediately become feminine as a result of violating Goddess Bhavani's prohibition. I will narrate this later. Bhavani Nathai Stri Ganarbhuda, I always get that wrong. Bhavani Nathai Stri Ganarbhuda, Ganarbhuda Sahasra. Bhavani Natha Sri Gana Arbhuda Sahasra Avaruddhyamana Bhagavatas chaturmurte Mahapurushasya turiyam tamasim murtim prakritim atmana sankarshana sangyam atmasamadhi rupena sannidhapyaitat abhigrinan bhava upadhavati. This gets interesting. So I wonder what you're thinking. What if there's a world where there's only one man? What would that man do? So I wonder what Bhava is going to do now. He's the only, and now allegorically speaking, but also this allegory is a real thing, not in Ilāvṛta, but in Kailash. He's using the analogy of Bhava and Bhavani to explain Ilāvṛta, but actually that analogy is also a real thing. Like if I say this candle is like the sun, it doesn't mean that the sun is fake. It means that there's a sun and there's a candle, and the candle is like the sun. So if I say Ilāvṛta and the crust is like Bhava and Bhavani, it doesn't mean Bhava and Bhavani is fake. Bhava and Bhavani are real, and the mantle and the crust are real, and the relationship between the two is similar. So what is Bhava doing with all those women? Bhavani, not surrounded by, so he's surrounded, and the word for surrounded is really a little more detailed than just the English word surrounded. Avaruddhyamana means tightly pressed, and you cannot see, like coated, covered by hosts of Arbuddha Sahasra, 10 billion. Arbuddha means, I think it's 1,000,000, and Sahasra is 1,000, so 1,000 million. Or Arbuddha might be, I don't know, but oh, wait, I have it here. I have my notes here. Arbuddha, 10 million, 1,000. Arbuddha is 10 million. 10 million thousand, so then there's 10 billion. In other words, that's a lot. Surrounded by hosts of 10 billion women, commanded by Bhavani. Bhavani natai strigana. So apparently a lot, this is also telling, apparently a lot of people are entering. Shuk said if somebody enters this realm, they become female because of Bhavani's curse. Now he says there's 10 billion females. So that's pretty interesting. That what that means is a lot of stuff is actually being subducted into the mantle, and there's a lot of stuff in the mantle, but they're not individual beings. They're all Shaktis of one being. So there's really just one occupant in there with lots and lots and lots and lots of power at his disposal. Surrounded by hosts of 10 billion women, commanded by Bhavani. Bhava runs to embrace the greatest man. So Bhava himself doesn't feel like a man. This is really interesting. The dynamics of these relationships in the allegorical form, which, as I sense, are not fake. He runs to embrace the greatest man. Who's the greatest man? Is Mahapurushasya. So Bhava was described as Puman, but this greater man is this, or truer man, or more real man of a man, is Mahapurusha. Mahapurushasya turiyam tamasim murtim. The fourth of the four-formed, all-attractive Bhagavata. So Bhagavata has Chaturmurti. Chaturmurti. 4 primary forms. Vasudeva, Sankarshan, Aniruddha, Pradyumna. This is a different topic. We'll explore this, I'm sure, one day. But the one who is in Ilāvṛta, stationed in Ilāvṛta, is Sankarshana Sangya, a form well known as Sankarshan, which gives solidity, tamas, but is beyond solidity. Tamasi, what is this? Tamasi murtim. It gives solidity and form to things. Form is murti, tamasi is solidity, opaqueness. Some say darkness, because opaque things cast shadows and are dark. Turiyam, while being beyond solidity and opaqueness, it grants solidity and form. Prakritim Atmana, surrounded by a host of 10 billion women commanded by Bhavani, Bhava runs to embrace the greatest man, the fourth of the four-formed, all-attractive Bhagavata, a form well known as Sankarshan, which gives solidity but is beyond solidity. Invoking him ever nearer by self-meditation. Invoking him ever nearer is Sannidhya. Sannidha means to pull something closer, to bring something closer, to pull something closer. I wonder if any of you are getting light bulbs. Sankarshan, Sannidh, Abhikrinan, Bhatavati. Things are being pulled towards each other, granting solidity. He invokes Sankarshan nearer by self-meditation. Atma Samadhi Rupena. By the process, by the rupa, by the form of Atma Samadhi, concentration upon the self, he thereby brings closer Sankarshan. Bhagavata. Why? Because Prakritim Atmana. Because Sankarshan is the basis for what he is, for what Bhava is. Knowing Sankarshan is the basis for his own self. So this is the basis of meditation for anybody. Tat Tvam Asi. The only way to comprehend Brahman. Since it is a thing which does not expose any properties, it is a thing which does not expose any limitations, comprehensible limitations. There is no way to perceive it or experience it except by being it. Because it exposes no properties, but it doesn't mean it has no properties. It exposes no properties. So if you realize identity with it, and then you can have experience of yourself without the need of exposure of properties. You have direct experience of the self, and the self is directly the same as Brahman. So therefore you can have direct experience of Brahman. So this is the whole purpose of meditation on the self. Know thyself, know God. So Bhava is doing this. He's running towards Sankarshan in his mind by meditating upon himself in order to understand his intimate oneness with Sankarshan. Very, very good stuff. The divinity in Ilāvṛta is Sankarshan. What does Sankarshan mean? Sankarsha. Karsha means to pull things together. It's the basis for the word Krishna also, where they have the same basis. To pull things, to attract things. Sankarsha means to pull things together. Ilāvṛta, Sankarshan is in Ilāvṛta. Ilāvṛta is the interior portion of Bhu. Sankarshan is gravity. The idea is that the massive interior of the earth generates gravity. Shuka is saying that inside the Ilāvṛta there's Sankarshan. He's saying in the earth there's gravity. The core, the middle, the part of the earth that's underground is what generates the gravity of the earth, all that mass. In Ilāvṛta, Bhava runs to. In Ilāvṛta, Bhava runs to Upadhavati, tries to embrace Abhikrina, Grin, tries to pull towards him Sanidhapya, a being described as Bhagavata. In chapter 15, we deduced and verified that Bhagavata refers to the sun. This was Bhagavata. This is the description of the orbit of the earth and the rotation of the earth around Bhagavata, and the distance to Bhagavata and the size of Bhagavata accurately to our modern measurements. So we really well verified that Bhagavata is the sun. Whoop. I wonder what just happened to my stream. Okay, let's see if the stream is still okay. So the gravitational attraction of the earth is being likened to the all-attractive itself. Yes, that's one good point. Ripple drop. If one takes on the practice of looking for oneself, you find nothing but a mental concept. You must not have a good guide. So if you have a good guide, then you would be able to differentiate, or you must not be following any authorized process. If you have an authorized process, like a bona fide process, a validated process, a process that actually works, and you have a guide helping you apply that process, then you will easily differentiate the functions of the body from the functions of the emotions, from the functions of the intellect, from the functions of the identity that arises from those functions, from the true self. So what he's saying here is, by saying that Bhava runs towards Bhagavata, what he's saying is that the mass of the earth is attracted to the mass of the sun. Because Bhava is in Ilāvṛta, the middle, the center of the earth, and it's trying to go closer to the sun. The momentum of the earth's movement is trying to push it away from the sun. But the attraction between Bhava and Bhagavata is Shuka's analogy of the gravity of what's holding, keeping the earth from shooting off into space and keeping it going around the sun in a circle. So in chapter 15, we deduced and verified that Bhagavata refers to the sun. The idea here is that the massive interior of the earth, Ilāvṛta, generates gravity, which pulls it towards the sun and prevents it from hurtling away into space. Most of the gravity is in the sun. What's this now? So being a woman is punishment. How women... It's not punishment. You interpreted that. How women have been suffering badly through the centuries. It says something about it being a difficult birth. I mean, everybody's birth is difficult. Our births are just difficult for different reasons. You might think it's a punishment to be transformed into a woman, but I don't. So, I mean, that's the thing. If you want to go, yeah, I don't see why you're bringing that up. But the point is, if you go into the mantle of the earth, you will get destroyed. You'll be changed into some other form of energy. And I already addressed that. Most of the gravity is in the sun, Bhagavata, and this is expressed by the analogy of the relationship between Sankarshan and Bhava. They are, in a sense, identical, Prakritim Atma. I mean, also, you seem to be... People, like Battletoads, like the idea that you have is very prejudiced. You're prejudiced to see sexism, and therefore you find sexism. And this is a real thing, because this perpetuates sexism. So you kind of didn't make a comment about the fact that Bhava is himself acting female. You didn't make a comment about the fact that the change of the person into the female is made by a female, Bhavani. You kind of ignored all those things and just noticed the one thing that matched your preconception, that the people giving this Shastra are sexist, which is natural. That's what we do. That's the way intelligence works. But you should be on the lookout about that. So the relationship between, even so, the reason why I went back to that is because Prakritim Atma means a female self. If you erase your preconception, then you will find the Bhagavata philosophy of masculine and feminine is not just beautiful, it's just so freaking real and practical and accurate. Most of the gravity is in the sun, Bhagavata. This is expressed by analogy of the relationship between Sankarshan and Bhava. They are, in a sense, identical, so that by contemplation of his own self, Bhava is able to perceive Sankarshan. This expresses that the main source of gravity is from Bhagavata, Sankarshan. So what Shuka is really saying is that the Bhagavata Sankarshan is the sun. Most of the gravity is in the sun. But in Ilāvṛta is Bhava, who is Sankarshan's avatar. Prakritimatma. Amsha. He's an Amsha he's a fragment or a portion of Sankarshan. So the earth is basically the same as the sun. There's a small fragment compared to a huge fragment. And so if the sun has a huge amount of gravity and the earth has a little bit of gravity. That's what he's explaining here. Bhava's identity with Sankarshan means that the gravity of the sun generates the mass of the earth and thereby invests the earth with a portion of its own gravity. Follow the analogy correctly, Sankarshan is the originator of Bhava. Bhava's existence is as an extension of Sankarshan. In the same way, the Earth's existence is an extension of the sun's existence, according to modern astrophysicists. The sun has to exist. By the sun coming into existence, its gravitational mass accretes a cloud and accretes a disk, and then the disk gets gravitational. Because of the sun's gravity, the disk itself gets gravitational locuses, and those accrete mass themselves, and you get planets formed. This is the idea that he's explaining in this, that he's expressing in this analogy. Shuka describes Sankarshan as, and this one is also really interesting. Sukha describes Sankarshan as giving solidity, tamasi murti, giving form, giving solidity, giving opaqueness, giving rigidity, but beyond solidity, turiya tamasi. The Earth's mantle grants solidity. So there's two things here, actually. One I didn't write. The Earth's mantle grants solidity to the surface of the Earth, but is itself a molten, semi-fluid, unstable thing. Sankarshan is in the mantle. As the Murti, as the deity, the actual original Sankarshan is in the sun. The Murti, or the deity expansion, is in Ilāvṛta, and worshipped by Bhava, who is himself an expansion of Sankarshan. So all this gravity stuff is being explained. So the gravitational force within Ilāvṛta, it's a molten thing, but it creates a solid thing. That's one meaning of tamasi murti, turiya tamasi murti. Something which is not solid, but creates something solid. The other meaning of it is that gravity itself is tamasi turiya. It's transparent. You can't see it. You can't touch it. It doesn't have a shape. But it is the generator of forms and shapes. So Sankarshan is turiya tamasi murti. It's beyond the forms that it creates, but it is the creator and basis for the forms. So that's important philosophy too. It's important physics to understand gravity, but it's also important philosophy. Sankarshan, or Vishnu, or Brahman, Param Brahman, is beyond the forms that it creates, but the basis for the forms that it creates. And it's the form created by gravity that establishes the gravity. Then the interior of the earth is the substrate and cause of the crust. But the sun is the substrate and cause of the earth's interior. So also the male-female is Bharya Bharta. The concept is that a male is strong and a woman is beautiful. So the male is like the foundation and the woman is like the thing that you set atop the foundation. The male is like a stage and the female is like the dancers on the stage. Or male is like the flower pot and the female is like the flower. Bharya Bharta. So the Ilāvṛta is the Bharta for Bhavani, the crust, the Bharya. There's a male-female relationship. But Bhagavata is the Bharta for Ilāvṛta and Meru, which is the Bharya. So this is another interesting thing that's really important about masculinity, femininity, is it's relative. It's relative in relational. There isn't really a meaning to femininity without masculinity. There isn't really a meaning to masculinity without femininity because they're relational to each other. Even if you have a plug with a feminine part and a male part, it's not a feminine part if there's not a male part. And it's not a male part if there's not a feminine part. You could say this goes in something. Where's that something that it goes in? So if you say this thing here, penis, goes into something, well, goes into what? If there's nothing called a vagina that exists, then this penis doesn't have any meaning. So the maleness of penetrating into something or being the strength or the inceptive thing doesn't have meaning without the femaleness of something to go into. Similar to Bharya, the Bharta doesn't have meaning without each other. So it's all relational. the one thing has to exist for the other thing to exist. So you can have multifaceted gender dynamics. Just like you have junior and senior dynamics, which are relational. Somebody is somebody else's teacher, but somebody is somebody else's student. So in one setting, somebody might be instructing, and in another setting, the same person might be inquiring. And all these relationship bipoles are relational. So Bhava has female disposition towards Bhagavat, but a male disposition towards Bhavani. Then what that means in terms of astronomy is that the crust is dependent upon the earth, and the earth is dependent upon the sun. Bhavani, the crust, is female in relation to Bhava, the mantle, because Bhava is her support and substrate. Bhava, however, is female in relation to Bhagavata. He runs to embrace the greatest man. Bhava abhikrinan upadhavati mahapurushasya murtim. Because Bhagavata, the sun, is the mantle's substrate and support. The hosts of 10 billion women commanded by Bhavani. The hosts of 10 billion women commanded by Bhavani refers to entities from the crust. Bhavani subducted into mantle, becoming integral parts of it. All right. From the next text, there is 17 through 24. So what is that? 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24. 8 texts of Bhavani, of Bhava's thoughts in meditation on Sankarshan. So maybe I'll be able to get those all translated in one batch for next week, so we can look at those. Then after that, this chapter ends, and then the next chapter has the other 8 varshas, each one having a divinity in it and having a bhakta for that divinity. And then explaining the way that bhakta's thoughts towards the divinity. And each one will give us insight like this. Any questions or anything like that? And now that you know what you know, let's just read the English very simple, and knowing what you know, if you can see how kind of cool it is, how the analogy is working. In Ilāvṛta, there is one and only one man, Bhagavan Bhava. If anyone else tries to enter, they immediately become feminine as a result of violating Goddess Bhavani's prohibition. I will narrate this later. Surrounded by hosts of 10 billion women commanded by Bhavani, Bhava runs to embrace the greatest man, the fourth of the four formed all-attractive Bhagavata, a form well known as Sankarshan, which gives solidity but is beyond solidity, invoking him ever nearer by self-meditation, knowing Sankarshan is the basis of his own self. Stephanie Ayo, thank you so much. Vidya, thank you. Thank you, Mary. Okay, guys. Thank you so much. I'm looking forward to the next week.